Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to be shot out of a cannon? Gregory has. The first human cannonball was launched in 1877. Her name was Rosa Richer, and she was only 17 at the time of her first performance. Her career as a human cannonball ended, not because she was being shot out of a cannon, but rather after she broke her back doing a tightrope walk. It's a trope where you can bombastically jump into something incredibly risky, like a cannon, and be completely fine, but ultimately break your stride by falling down the stairs. And this is what scares Gregory the most. We don't know our own tightrope fall until it's already happened. And since we're so close to the finish line, we're going to be careful. Our first goal today will be to develop the final building visible from the street, mostly because I'm just tired of looking across and seeing that gap there. Another much smaller goal is the lot in front of the two houses. I decided a while ago just to develop a small park right there, though originally the plan was to build a church on that spot. Old Gregory needed religion. He needed worship. Now he needs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And his mood boosted every 5 minutes for some reason. The inspiration for today's build comes from an unusual place. So far we have buildings from Texas, Michigan, Canada, as well as like a general European layout, but I've been wanting to branch out some more. So I found a building in India, specifically Mumbai. It is the Ishmael building at Flora Fountain. It's like a plaza. Though unlike our other builds, we won't be adapting it as faithfully. Because of the size of the building we have to work with, as well as general scaling problems, we're going to be largely on our own in choosing which details to adapt and where we go off the page. And everything's going pretty well so far. The plan at the moment is to use this brick to keep away from the wall. That way we can have insets for the windows without having to rely on walls. The only drawback with this method is that it's unforgivingly expensive. I mean, it sure does look nice, though I don't know if that's buyer's remorse talking. You know, there just feels like there's something missing from our city plot. Everything looks too nice. Gregory's not going to be able to afford living here when everything's said and done. To counteract this, we have a plan. This build will be a bank. The basement will be a safe, the first floor a lobby, and then 2 floors of offices. He who controls the money doesn't have to grind pizza delivery. Actually, Gregory has been to many banks before, though for legal reasons he cannot say what he was doing there. And so far, everything's going pretty well. The design for the windows was partially spontaneous, as will be most of the build past this point, if you haven't noticed. We'll be working less and less off the reference building and focus more on what is needed on our build to make it more cohesive. And once we finish up the first story, we're going to build our way up. But first, some very important things to consider. First, the color palette. And I know I say it is important to get right the first time. It's the most malleable element of any build, but it will absolutely influence how we build the remaining structure. And having a good one now will go a long ways as we develop the rest of the build. As of right now, my favorite detail are the tiny upper window arches. They're just a neat detail. It wasn't very hard to include. And so we move upwards. The second story is going to have 2 main features: balconies and decorative pillars. I particularly like the pillars, mostly because they offer something different. It's not us just putting up more of the same wall. I don't do anything particularly fancy with the detailing here, and that's just because we're already investing a lot of equity and resources into the brickwork. I use gold for the rails, not only because it stands out and matches the color scheme, but I also like the statement that it makes. Yeah, my bank is gilded rails, not a big deal. I think I might go buy some more ovens or whatever it is rich people do. I don't know about you, but the way the build is turning out, the walls just feel so much taller than they actually are, and I love it, especially for the windows. It feels rather grandiose. Also grandiose, so we're using the pillars I made for the Nupanu house here. And while we're at it, we'll work on the very front of the build. The third story will make itself. I'm not really worried about it. Our focus here is going to be on the decorative support piece. I don't know exactly what it's specifically called. We're going to be making 2 of these. One more basic on the ground floor in front of the door, and then another on the 3rd story, just below the 4th story window. So we want to make it so that we can easily convert the first one into the second, so that we don't have to build 2 of them. The one in the real life building has all these shapes that I cannot reasonably render in this game. So instead, I opted to use elements we already had and place basic shapes around them to get the general idea of what it's going to look like, and then add any details I felt were missing, or cover anything I messed up. This is probably the one element I'd revisit if I were to come back and work on this build some more, but it'd be small changes. And so we work on the third story. I debated having the large pillars repeat or extend up there, which I could have very well made work, but I went with a different plan. My thought process was that they should be supporting something, so I made a little ridge. I also played around forever with the coloring on the smaller pillars, and I eventually just had to settle on something so that I continue with the rest of the build. And one of the nice things about watching a video like this, even when I edit these things, it never really conveys the struggle I have while building. Everything needs to be adjusted slightly. Everything is falling out of line with each other, and structural things like the pillars or the arches are almost never straight. It's probably my fault, but I wish I was a little bit better at handling these sort of things. Or it could be Gregory's fault. Though, don't let me steer you away from experimenting with the game. The prefab options can be nice, but there are so many more architectural features you can bring into your builds. It's worth the struggle. And the great thing about doing it yourself is that your build gets to stand out from everyone else's. Though, be prepared to spend a lot more time and money. So I don't fault anybody for sticking to the pre-made stuff. And you can make some great stuff with that too. Like I did with the pillars and the windows. And as we finish off the front, there's one particular detail I want to call out. So I can't for the life of me figure out the window planters or just guarding in general in this game. I just can't. I haven't figured it out. That'll be Gregory's ultimate character development, gardening. But when this game first came out, before all the structural elements and all the fancy stuff we have now, I would use this potted plant in a lot of my builds, whether as an actual plant or as an attic vent. It could serve a lot of purposes. So I use them here as a homage. And they look rather nice where I placed them. All we really have left now to focus on is the tiny 4-story. So first we're going to build up the second of the decorative ledges. I don't really have a plan for this one either. I'm just going to kind of let it build itself. The big focus for me was the circular feature at the very top, which I switched from a window to an inset diamond. And I know I keep saying things look nice, but I mean, it looks nice. That looks nice. Now we really only have to worry about the roof, which is again different than our reference. Because the 4-story sticks up so high, we can't leave it as it is. It's like a flat roof. So I put a simple roof up there. The roof for the center part took a lot longer to figure out the shape for. I also added more plants, just because I felt like it, honestly. And that completes today's build. As always, I appreciate you joining Gregory in this little journey. This video has already gone on long enough, so I'll wrap up quickly. Before I started today, I thought it'd be hard to top the Nuppanu house. I'm really happy with that one. But this is easily my favorite building in the plot. It's just so interesting to see our progression as we've eased ourselves back into the game. Though it's not looking good for us to be able to finish the block like I wanted. The file size it's at 80% now, pretty close to that max. So we're gonna have to make some hard choices in the future. To close, I find the act of being shot out of a cannon neat to think about, but the thought of why someone would voluntarily choose to be shot out of a cannon for a stunt is infinitely more interesting. And that's what motivates me in my daily life. It's not about what happens to you, it's about what you choose to do with the time you have. And that doesn't have to be anything crazy like being a human cannonball. It's about the passion you show for it. Finding that will give you all the tools you need. And once you've identified it, pursue that passion like no other. Because one day you may find yourself falling from a tightrope.